and AFSIC 2023. That's Investing in Africa 2023 event kicks off today in London with over 1,200 delegates attending the 2 days of high-level meetings, dialogue, and networking focused on investment opportunities in Africa. Let's get a sense of what to expect and has kicking off. Joining us now is Abdulrahim, co-founder, Stears, joining me right there in London. Great to have you on the show.
Morning, Ladi. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. So you're attending the event, and I believe Stears is a sponsor also. What should investors and businesses expect at this year's gathering?
Yes, so we are attending as a lead sponsor for the event, and I believe the key thing that we're seeing, even just from the early conversations we're having with investors, is trying to get a sense of the opportunities in Africa. I think, as we all know, we've seen, particularly with countries like Nigeria, some policy reforms that are essentially making investors interested and potentially giving some new opportunities in the market. So we're seeing that investors are obviously, they still remain interested in Africa. Obviously, the rising tide, everyone wants to tap into the opportunity. But what is key there is essentially making sure that there is effective guidance in how to tap into those opportunities. So what sectors should they be looking at? Financial services, energy, etc. And how do they take the right market? So are we talking Nigeria? Are we talking Kenya, South Africa? Investors want to know how to take advantage of those opportunities.
And what kind of opportunities or sectors would you say investors attending will be interested in? Because I know most businesses, startups are looking for funding right now, but it'll be great to know what fund managers are looking for right now. Where is smart money going?
Yeah, I like the fact that you use the word smart money. I think for us as Stears, especially, that word smart money means money that is allocated in a very efficient way. So being very data-driven about where the opportunities are. Financial services still remains a very key area for investors. I think financial inclusion obviously is a very big untapped market or untapped issue in Africa. So we still see that interest in fintech solutions, where we're talking about solutions that enable the sort of unbanked and maybe parts of the continent that don't have strong financial infrastructure to take advantage of solutions like payments, savings, lending. Lending still remains a very big element of essentially unlocking financial opportunities in the consumer markets in Africa. So that is one of the key areas. I mean, another one is, and I guess remains, and also a very pertinent one, considering some of the issues we've seen with the fuel crisis in Nigeria, is energy. And some of the conversations that we're seeing is obviously around how do we go beyond some of our current energy sources. So looking at renewable energy sources that essentially are more sustainable, and how do we make that accessible to sort of all parts of the market as well.
No major African economies are dealing with currency devaluation issues, rising unsustainable debt, high inflation, rising poverty. We keep talking about big opportunities in Africa, but how do we move from potential to real development for, say, a country like Nigeria?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we can just zone into Nigeria, and obviously, there's some historical context that has made investors a little bit nervous about going to a market like Nigeria. Some of the policy reforms we've seen around FX, and also maybe even some of the usage of fuel subsidies, has started to maybe turn the tide, although a key concern there is still how some of the policies are affecting some of the consumer market. So with rising prices around inflation and the financial other forex as well, we've seen obviously consumer wallets shrink to an extent. So when it comes to the question of how do we turn some of these opportunities and potential into actual realizable gains, not just for the investors, but also for our continent and also for our country as well. It's actually about sort of trying to get them the clarity that they need to take those steps. So when we're speaking to investors, we often come onto the question of how do they manage the risk with investing in Africa? So if I'm putting investing dollars into the Nigerian economy, how do I know I'm going to get the equivalent back when I take my money out in 5 or 10 years? And what we want to essentially see is some of the government stakeholders starting to take more action in providing those investors clear guidance and clarity. Obviously, we do so ourselves with our solutions to customers and trying to help them better guide their investments and also trying to get into the minds of the policymakers. So what is the central bank thinking when it comes to sort of some of the rates and policy decisions that they're making? Because those are things that fundamentally change an investment decision for some of the steelmakers. But for us, and I think for us to basically take advantage of some of these opportunities that we're seeing, we need to shift into a mindset where we're providing clarity to investors about what to expect. I think the more risk there is in the market, the more uncertainty they keep seeing in the market, the more hesitation that we get and the more uncertainty there is around the investment. And that will continue to essentially hinder sort of influx of capital. And I think to the point you made about the debt situation, obviously with the conversation you had earlier with Emmanuel, I think it was very clear that sort of, parts of the solution is it comes from policy, but the other way we can essentially address some of the issues when it comes to growth in the economy is actually getting an influx of investments from international capital. So funding infrastructure, funding investments in technology sector like fintech, financial services, and even, for instance, like for development of energy as well. But for that to happen, investors need clarity. They need to understand how they're going to essentially make their money back. Because when that information is not there, and when that clarity is missing, you tend to get obviously hesitation and sort of doubts around the opportunity in the markets.
I'm wondering if the investors there, have that mentality of buy, when the market is fearful, and sell when the market is greedy. But what do you think businesses and startups, looking to raise, funds, what do you think they should be doing to, whet the appetite of investors over there?
Yeah, and I actually, I have come across a couple of companies who are raising funding at this event. And what is very important, obviously, first is to show up, obviously, to actually engage with these investors. Sometimes I think because these events happen outside of Africa, there's obviously that gap where, the difficulty in actually connecting with the investors is one issue. So obviously being present is one of the key issues to tap into that capital. And then the other thing is actually making the opportunity very, very clear. So we've had obviously some successes both in the financial, fintech and technology ecosystem to also energy. We've seen some solar powered success in terms of giving access to solar power technology to the lower class. But I think the best thing I can advise for companies and startups or even organizations trying to tap into this capital is actually how to package this, the opportunity to an investor. And I think that is obviously fundamentally down to where do the investors make gain? Where is the money coming from? I believe it's very difficult for startups or for companies to raise when an investor is unable to tell how they make their money back. And I think, these are financially driven and so financially incentivized individuals and organizations. I think the best way to also just gain their trust and their interest is simply by telling them how does this become a $1 million or $1 billion opportunity for you? And as soon as you're able to sort of clearly make that case to an investor, it makes it very easy for them to take that leap. But I think as a first step is actually just, being able to connect with the right people, the investors that are sort of focused on the right sectors. And another thing I'd also just I think it's important to also advise to the investors is also thinking about being realistic about the returns when it comes to a continent like Africa, because there is so much uncertainty in terms of investments and also the economic environment and how the policies affect the returns on investment. It's very, very key for investors to think about the use of patient capital. And it's not to say that the returns don't come, but I think it's just being realistic about what to expect when it comes to investing in the African market. There is a lot to navigate and a lot of hoops to jump through as a company operating in the continent. I think we've seen that firsthand as an African company. So I think from the investor side, I think thinking about the patient capital element and also being more open-minded to what opportunities look like outside of the European and the sort of North American markets.
So I see this year Ethiopia is in the spotlight. Why is that?
Yes, Ethiopia has come through some obviously recent political headwinds. I believe, from last year, they had some sort of, civil unrest that led to sort of a difficult economic situation from the country. Now that has been resolved. I think a lot of one of the focus of the country, and I think this should be the case for a lot of African countries beyond Ethiopia, but it is essentially how do we turn the economic situation. And similar to what I said earlier, I think I know they have like an investment summit here at AFSIC. They are looking for foreign capital to help boost the economy. So they're looking for foreign capital to essentially invest in key infrastructure, key sectors to essentially enable the development, innovation that they need to essentially springboard the economic activity in the country. So that is obviously something that is somewhat incentivized by the recent past situation for Ethiopia. But I would also like to just flag, I think there are also a few other countries I think I've also seen at AFSIC that are trying to make a case for themselves because it is important to get that foreign capital injection into the economy.
Right. So definitely hoping most of these businesses, they're able to attract, all of the investment they need, and hoping that it's going to be a successful event. Thank you so much, Abdul Rahim, co-founder Stears. It was great having you today.
Thank you.